This is, at the time of release, the 25th anniversary of Breakaway Day. So this video is dedicated to the television show Space 1999. I am not the biggest collector of 1999 merchandise, but fundamentally this is a show that typifies what this channel is all about. So when I say the future of the past, Space 1999 couldn't really be any closer to what I mean, because it was a show that was released in the year of my birth in 1975, set 24 years into the future in 1999, and is now 25 years old in its own timeline. At least it's nearly 50 years old in terms of when it was originally created, and yet I'm still sat here talking about it, you're still sat there watching me talk about it, and we're still getting toys based on Space 1999. Now, one of the interesting things about the show, of course, was that it started off as this. Now, I'm sure you'll be familiar if you're watching this video, but in case you're not, this is a UFO Interceptor, which was based on the moon in the show UFO, which was Gerry Anderson's precursor to Space 1999. And in fact, originally, Space 1999 would have been season 2 of UFO. But UFO season 2 didn't happen, and Space 1999 happened instead. So that's the interconnection between this and this. And this is really what I want to talk to you about in this video. Because for me, this little spaceship, an Eagle, is probably where my love of spaceships began. Because I totally remember watching Space 1999 when I was very little. I owned 2 of these Dinky Eagles, and I loved them to death. Albeit I did stick the die-cast nose into the fire at home to simulate re-entry burns, but I did nevertheless love them to death. And I've now been able to reacquire all 3 of the colours. So they were white, green and blue, strangely. Only white appeared in the show, but they did have a variety of different pods. And for the longest time, I have been meaning to pick up some of the more modern editions of this ship, toys of this ship. So in terms of my my Space 1999 bona fides, I will just show you this. This was my attempt to create a Lego Eagle. And I put this up on Lego Ideas. Unfortunately, it didn't get enough support. It didn't do badly, but it didn't get enough support for them to consider making it a real Lego set, which I think was a bit of a shame, obviously, but I'm somewhat biased. But I really enjoyed doing it, and I think a lot of people did, appreciate the fact that I'd tried to do it, even down to the fact that if you take the cockpit off, it's one piece, and there is a reasonably accurate Space 1999 Moonbase Alpha astronaut in the cockpit. So I was quite happy with that. But, it's just one of those things where this is quite an old show now. As I said, it's nearly 50 years old. But many people credit the Eagle with being one of the first really sort of believable science fiction spaceships, in terms of it having a sort of being reproducible in the real world. Now, I'm not sure what it would have used for fuel to get the sort of power to weight ratio that it seems to have in order to be able to do sort of, intra-planetary flight as well as planetary landings. Yeah, that's a whole other conversation. But nevertheless, the Millennium Falcon nearly ended up looking like one of these. But then they saw this and decided no, they were going to change the design. So you only have the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars that you know and love because this exists. Because otherwise you would have ended up with this in Star Wars rather than the Millennium Falcon. So there you go. What I want to show to you in this video, as a commemoration of 25 years since Breakaway Day, are two ships from the show. Not just the Eagle, but also the Hawk. And I've never thought that I would actually own a Hawk. I think to my knowledge, they only appeared in one episode, which was War Games. I have to admit, I haven't sat and watched the series for quite a while, and I do intend to, because I now have it on Blu-ray. There's all sorts of different releases that have been over time. I've even got some VHS tapes of the series in my possession at the moment. But I recently went to a toy fair at Doncaster, and I picked up this rather splendid set. Now this is Product Enterprise. This, as you can see, is a rather lovely Space 1999 Deluxe Eagle gift set. And it has got more than just an eagle in it. And I will take this and show it to you in my normal fashion very shortly. But just to give you a rough idea of what the box looks like, that's what the box looks like. It's a big thing. I wasn't looking for this, I just saw it and I thought, yes please. So, you know, quite a big purchase, but I thought it would be rude not to, because I've always been curious to have a look at the Product Enterprise Eagles. I'm sure many of you have owned them for many years, but I just haven't. I've even got the Eaglemoss editions that I will throw into the mix here, so you can sort of compare and contrast. And I believe that the Jerry Anderson store has also been selling some re-releases which look very similar to me to the Eaglemoss ones. So I'm not sure if they are the same. There have also been countless model kits and so on, but as I'm not a model maker, you know, at all really, this isn't really right in my ballpark. This is sort of what I like. It's pre-made, it's very high quality, it's done for me. Now, you may be familiar with the history of the Product Enterprise line. I'm not familiar with it in massive detail, but what I do know is that Product Enterprise put these Eagles into the mass market, and I don't think they sold enough of them. So apparently they were sort of going really cheaply virtually everywhere at one point, and then they just sort of fizzled out. But out of those ashes came 1612. Now, I've never owned one of these 1612 products before either. I've always hankered after one, but I've never actually owned one. And this is a Mark 9 Hawk warship. And this, as I say, only appeared, I believe, in just the one episode. I could be wrong, but I think it's just the one episode. And it was a fighter craft based on the Eagle. Now, why there would have been an Earth fighter craft, and the Alphans do recognise it as being an Earth craft, even though it's been sort of, it shouldn't be there basically. It's a sort of mock-up in a sense. But for some reason, Earth had developed a warship based on the Eagle design. So I always loved this as a concept, because I think I must have watched the episode when I was little, because I've always known about this. But again, I've never had a 1612 model, but I understand that this should be from the same sort of overall approach as Product Enterprise, because they're effectively the same company, but just one came out of the other, basically. So I don't know if the scaling is going to be exactly the same, but I'm going to be looking at that in this video. And I also want to have a look at this, because I've had this for nearly a year, and I still haven't got around to looking at it. So I'm going to look at it with you. So this is Welcome to Moonbase Alpha, and this is the Moonbase Alpha Technical Operations Manual. Now this is kind of the sort of thing that I think it is. I think there are some Easter eggs in here, but I also think it's going to be right up my street, because I used to love my Star Trek The Next Generation Technical Manual to death. So I'm hoping it's going to be similar to that as well. So without further ado, I'm going to dig into all of these things for you in the section that follows. So do please like and subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and let's get into it. Cheers. So let's begin with the Product Enterprise Deluxe Eagle gift set. I've been very restrained. I don't think I've even had this out of the box since I got it, but I was kind of saving it for, you know, to get my sort of genuine first reaction for you from doing this. So, you know, presentationally is a lovely thing. Let me just show you the back of it before I actually get into it. Maybe a tactical error on my part because everything's going to want to fall out, but it is well packed. So we've got a nice little blurb on the back there mentioning September 13th, 1999 as Breakaway Day. The moon is blown out of Earth's orbit by a nuclear explosion and hurled into deep space, taking the inhabitants of Moonbase Alpha with it on a fantastic and perilous journey. I think everyone who's seen the series knows what the backstory is there, but it's one of those things for me, is looking back on it now, it's like, well, how on earth did they manage to get from solar system A to solar system B if they're not going faster than light? And I think that apparently in the series there are black holes and wormholes involved that do, sort of bounce them from one place to another faster than would otherwise be the case. So that's the sort of explanation for how come they can move around quite so quickly. So as you can see here, we've got it's a laboratory Eagle, but we've also got a laser tank, which is cool, a little moon buggy, and a booster pack for the Eagle as well. So let's crack this open now. I'm actually going to I'm just trying to see when this was actually produced, but the writing is very small. However, it does say here 1975 and 2006. So my guess would be that this is 2006. Now I don't know where that falls within Product Enterprise's overall production timelines, but you know, it's 2006, so we've got that as a reference point. So let's get into the model proper. There's the classic Space 1999 logo there. That is the eponymous logo for the series. It's nice to have that nice and big like that, and indeed nice to have it on the front cover like that. That's also pretty awesome. Okay, now it's held together by a sort of Velcro on the inside, so the flap is rather like, you know, sort of modern NECA figures and so on. But they were obviously doing it, you know, nearly 20 years ago. So this in and of itself is almost a vintage Eagle now, just purely by its own age. You can see at the front here, if I move this over to the left so you can see the actual inside cover a bit more clearly, we've got a nice grouping of images from the show that actually, you know, just sort of show the Eagles in flight and Moonbase Alpha there centrally. And this is the hangar where all the Eagles were kept underneath Moonbase Alpha, and they had a lot of them, and also production capabilities, it appears, because they used to burn through Eagles quite rapidly. So you know, they definitely needed a way to resupply themselves. The interesting thing is as well, it's taken quite a while for them to produce an Eagle that is actually show accurate, because the Dinky Eagles never were particularly. The transport sort of, the rescue Eagles were pretty much spot on, actually, in fairness, but the radioactive canister cargo Eagle was never quite done the same way. So I'm going to open this up. It has been out before, so I'm not sort of particularly unsealing it, but let me just try and do this in a sensible fashion without knocking anything over. What could possibly go wrong with doing this on camera? Okay. So The inner is slightly, ever so slightly yellowed, but the inside contents are absolutely fine. And as you can see, you also get a nice sort of Moonbase Alpha landing pad there, which has got sort of scorch marks on it as if an eagle has landed on it. So the overall display case for this, being the box, is actually brilliant. And interestingly, it's labelled as a 14 plus product. So it's not for children. It's not for the children. So let's get into this now. Now, the gentleman who I bought this from told me that this tank in and of itself is very hard to get, because I believe it may only have come in this set. So notwithstanding the fact that the Eagle is awesome, the tank may actually be quite a hard to find item as well, which is, you know, cool, if that's an issue for you. But I just love the fact that it's so well detailed. And it's, you know, there's a decent weight to it, which means I'd hesitate to say it isn't just a lump of plastic, because it's possible it is largely plastic, but nevertheless the level of detailing on there is really, really nice. You know, I would have to go back and actually watch the show to tell you whether or not these are completely show accurate, but I'm guessing they're if they're not, I'd be very surprised. Because there's just too much detail on there for them to have not replicated the show very, very closely. Actually reminds me slightly, probably because I've just been looking at it, of the battle tank from Terrorhawks. Just this little grill effect on the back there. But perhaps some of these elements do get reused, obviously. But that is very, very cool. You've got the little Moonbase Alpha sticker on there as well. You can just make that out. It's also got a little bit of detail on the in sort of the control module part of it there as well. Now, again, I might be wrong, but I'm wondering if these only appeared in just a few episodes, possibly even just in season 2. I could be wrong about that, but I can't remember exactly how often we saw these. Again, it's one of those things where you sort of wonder why did they have these sort of quite militaristic things on the moon base? But it may just be that they were there for sort of more for dramatic effect in an episode that maybe wasn't, you know, mainstream reality. I'm not sure. Now this is really cool. Again, not something the Dinky's ever had. But I've seen them on other models before, and I have seen them in the show. So these are these sort of booster packs that can be strapped onto the spine of the Eagles to give them a kick. Now the funny thing is that, as you can see, the thrusters are not perhaps pointing in the direction you might expect them to point in order to provide a forward boost, because that would boost you this way rather than that way. So I'm not quite sure why they opted for that, other than not burning the back off the Eagle, I suppose. But, you know, I'm not quite sure why that was a choice. But that is show accurate, because I think that they did look like this in the show. So again, just a really, really nice additional piece that maybe you wouldn't get if you got an average Eagle set from Product Enterprise. So very happy to have it, and you know that is in absolutely sort of bob on conditions. You can see there's absolutely no difficulties with that whatsoever. So happy to have that. And the teeniest, tiniest little thing in this, I'm kind of frightened of picking up the astronaut, but okay, he's held on, that's good. Very, very light, and there's no weight to this at all. Little tiny little classic Space 1999 yellow moon buggy. Now, I'm trying to think. I think yellow is supposed to be one of the most visible colours. So painting your moon buggies yellow isn't just being done for aesthetic effect. It's actually being done because it does aid visibility. And given that it's very, very dark in space, it could well be that that's actually an eminently sensible colour to paint a moon buggy. Which is curious, because a lot of other things in Space 1999 are white, of course, but moon buggy is yellow. And again, I would imagine those are probably quite hard to come by because they are so tiny, they could very, very easily get lost. And here we have the main item. Now, I don't know if this has still got some plastic over the top of it. No, because I can actually properly feel it. I'm just hesitant to get it out in the wrong way, because there is some plastic there. Let me just see. That's interesting. There are little bits of plastic just sort of covering it. I'm just wondering if it's got its own inner layer of plastic. It's like having an Easter egg and not knowing what to do with it. Okay. Okay. That's cool. I got it. Okay, so it's not actually. So the pod is not linked in. Right. Okay. Wow. Now, I'm saying wow because that weighs a ton. There's a lot of metal in that. Good Lord. Is it all metal? It's cold, so all of this is so not unlike the Dinky pods actually. This is the underside isn't. The underside is plastic, but the sides and the top are solid metal. And I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure these elements are as well. So that is virtually completely metal. Wow. Now that's really interesting because you'd have to be really careful how you displayed this. Because if you put this on a sort of a perspex shelf, that's actually total. It's going to be a lot of weight for a shelf to hold if you've got other things on it as well. So you'd have to sort of, take a fairly careful decision as to how you manage that. But I mean, look at that sort of detail on the doors. I mean, this might be a good time actually to start having a look at this alongside the original Dinky. Now, this obviously is not. You can. I mean, the sheer size difference is pretty hilarious just to start with, isn't it? I mean, you can see they're shoulder to shoulder there, and there is no real sort of comparison size-wise. I mean, it's not actually twice the size, but there is a big size difference there between the two of them. You can see the Dinky Eagle sort of almost fits within the pod length of the product Enterprise. That's still got a covering on it. So I mean, yeah, you've got to give it to them. The actual packaging on them is phenomenal. Now these engine bells, I believe, are plastic, but I think the 1612 ones may be aluminium. I think that's one of the differentiators possibly. But if I just show you the pod from this very early Dinky. You can see that obviously because they're modelled off the same sort of concept, they are very, very similar. So the door outlines and so on are nigh on identical, as are the sort of the way in which that they've handled landing gear and thrusters on the underside of the pod. So the more things change, the more they stay the same, as they say. But again, there's a size difference there between that and that. Obviously, very, very different. But both in their own way are still very, very accurate, and you can see the sort of the detailing, little circle there on the top of the landing pods is present in both of them. They're not radically different, which means that they're both spot on, if that makes sense. Yeah, it's funny because as I say, for me, it's just such a familiar ship that I love the way that they've done it. Now I'm assuming, let me get the Dinky out of the way so that we don't do any damage to that. And presumably this is, I don't know exactly how it's actually, so it's got slots underneath the inner doors there. So presumably you sort of strap it in. But again, I need to read the instructions on this just to understand how to do it in the best way possible so that it's not going to put too much pressure on anything. Because there must be, the spine feels surprisingly plasticky, considering it's got to carry this much weight, but then I imagine that there's metal inside here. So I'm actually not going to risk attaching this when I don't know what I'm doing with it. But what I did want to do, if I just loosely put this over the top, I do have a direct comparator with this, and that is an Eaglemoss Eagle, ironically enough. And I remember being really surprised when they brought these out. Now, that's really interesting because the Eaglemoss, now I had issues with this Eaglemoss Eagle because, as you can see, this is a much grayer colour than the black that Product Enterprise have used, and I would expect it to be pure black. So I was disappointed personally when I got my Eaglemoss Eagle, but again, it was the first time that I personally had an eagle that was a science laboratory eagle, because I didn't have, Dinky's never had that pod. And this was all pre-made. So you can see that the actual detailing is pretty close. The engine bells are slightly differently done. I think overall somehow the Eaglemoss one doesn't quite convince me in the same way that the Product Enterprise one does. But they are remarkably close in scale, closer than I would have thought. So, you know, you pay your money and you take your choice at the end of the day. Now, as I mentioned, I don't know whether or not this is exactly the same as the current line that the Jerry Anderson store has been selling online. I don't know if they're exactly the same size models. They came with sort of slightly more of a landing pad backdrop rather than just a standard Eaglemoss sort of ellipse base. So I don't know if you get exactly the same model for your money. But obviously, as I say, you know, there are much bigger models that you can create for yourself if you wish to, if you have the skill to do so. But for me, these are as good as I'm going to get, because I can't glue stuff together and paint to save my life. But you know, the Product Enterprise is definitely winning it for me there. That is an awesome recreation of an eagle. It really, really is. And you know, you can still find them. It's not, as I say, you know, I wasn't looking for this one, and I managed to find it. So I'm very happy that I did. So what I'm really interested in looking at now is the Hawk, because the Hawk is either going to be, you know, exactly the same sort of quality as this, or it's going to be something slightly different. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I don't know how big the Hawk is in terms of whether or not the Hawks were supposed to be smaller than the Eagles or not. So I'm just going to very carefully move this out of the way so I can get the Hawk out without risking either of them. I am surprised about how light the main Eagle is. There is much less metal in the actual Eagle itself than I would have expected as compared with its pod. That I find rather curious. So here's the Hawk, Mark 9 Hawk warship. And as I say, apparently this was something that Earth had produced, which I don't understand as a concept, because I don't know who they would have been fighting unless it was another Earth faction, or unless it was designed to destroy space debris, you know, could have been, possibly. Or perhaps there was some sort of conflict between factions in the solar system that I don't know of. You know, perhaps there's some secondary fiction that I'm not aware of that addresses that. But let's get into this. I don't think this is sealed, so I'm not going to get too upset about getting into it. And quite frankly, I like to play with my Eagles, so I'm not going to not get into them. So similar approach, obviously not quite so pretty a box. Oh, limited edition, number 613 of 1500 only worldwide, apparently. So there you go. You heard it here first, quite possibly. There's a little bit of a sort of I think a Moonbase Alpha sort of outline on the inside of the box. So I do appreciate the effort that's been put into the box, in that it's not just blank on the inside. So again, presentationally, I think that's really nice. Now on the back, we've got a bit more detail about exactly what the special limited edition of the Mark 9 Hawk. Yes, features the model as it was originally painted. Now this is a good point, actually. In the show, the Hawks actually ended up having some orange highlighting, which is unusual. I think maybe to help people distinguish them from the Eagles. So this version that I've got is actually a sort of a pre-production version, which doesn't have the orange highlighting. So, as originally painted and delivered to the studio for filming in '75, A brief from special effects director and designer Brian Johnson, famous man, was as the Hawk was from the same fleet as the Eagle transporter, this should be reflected in both its design and colour scheme. However, shortly before filming of the effect sequences began, it was decided that the model too closely resembled the Eagle. Yeah, and that might cause confusion for the audience. There you go. So my guess was correct when viewing the episode. To create a visual distinction between the two spacecraft, the Hawk filming miniature was quickly repainted at the studio in a now famous orange livery seen in the final episode. There we go. Okay. So this special edition brings to life the original version as not seen in the 17th story from season 1, yeah, of the classic British television show Space 1999. Brilliant. Featuring original colour scheme of filming miniature, in-flight display stand featuring Space 1999 logo, limited to only 1,500 sets worldwide. Wow. Well, I'm even more grateful I've managed to pick one up now then, although this was simply bought off eBay. You know, just one of those things. I just felt lucky with this then, presumably. I don't know if it's one of those times when they sort of released the first 1,500, then they released another 1,500. Perhaps somebody in the comments can tell me that, but you know, that's always a possibility. So let's see if it's the same as it was before. I imagine it's, say, lift off the top gently. Put that there. Remove the stickerage. Somebody else will come in the comments now and tell me they've got 613 as well, I bet you. Now then, I can get you out. That's it. Now, the funny thing is, that immediately disappoints me somewhat because I get this occasionally with Eaglemoss models that I pick up. It's immediately too light, by which I mean I don't think there's any metal in there. Now, maybe these... I think maybe the engine bells could be metal. I think they may have gone with metal for the engine bells. I like the fact that the engine bells are darker on the inside. They look like they've fired. They look like they've had you know, some engine activity, which I think is better. But the whole thing is relatively plasticky feeling. There's a little bit too much weight for it to be pure plastic, so maybe there is some metal down the spine of it somewhere. So it's an interesting ship. It is, although it's recognisable in terms of the sort of cockpit element as being Eagle derived, it's very much got its own character, which I like. You know, if you're going to do a warship, then obviously it should look a bit different. So these would be in the cannons at the front here. And obviously it's like different engines, more for sort of straight line speed, I guess, and boost. So, but it's got the little RCS control thrusters like the Eagle has as well. So that's a sort of in keeping with the Eagle as the sort of design principle for it. So yeah, it's kind of, it's good, but it hasn't got the sort of production quality that I would have expected having just handled the Product Enterprise. Although again, the Product Enterprise is not as heavy as I was expecting. I don't think there's anywhere near as much metal in the Eagle frame as there is in the Dinky, for example. And they seem to have given me something else to put together here. So there seems to be some sort of stand element. Okay, so that's the stand there, and I'm guessing it sits on this plastic tube. I'm not going to try and construct that now because I'll mess it up, which will be embarrassing. But there's definitely there's a little stand element there and a pole which must presumably... Well, actually, no, there's no obvious insert for... I can see actually. I think it probably fits in these gaps here. I think that's a sort of connection point that they've used. So you can add the little piece there onto that and then have a pole coming down. So that's nice from a display point of view. That I perhaps wasn't expecting. But that does feel, it does feel strangely Eaglemossy to me. So it's just a fairly sort of, so it's got a Space 1999 logo emblazoned on it, although very, very subtly, it has to be said. Instructions for stand assembly, important, please read. Well, I will do it at some point, but not right now, because that's not good for videoing. Okay, so, good for display, so I can see that. I mean, the nice thing about the Eagles is they can display themselves because they've got 4 feet. That's not a problem for the Eagles, but obviously for the Hawk, they need to do something a little bit different, although it will lie down quite happily, but displaying it like that makes perfect sense, and that's, as I say, that's very reminiscent of how Eaglemoss would do it. So that was the Eagle and the Hawk from Space 1999. But I did say there would be one more thing, and it is this. And this is the Moonbase Alpha Technical Operations Manual Post-Breakaway Revised Edition. So this is as if they'd done it after the moon's broken away, so they've sort of changed their operating procedures a little bit. I guess that would be the idea. Now, I've seen images of this, but I say I've never actually gone through it. So a bit of a copyright thing, I suppose. I won't linger too long on any given page, just so that they can't accuse me of doing anything naughty. But I don't know if these are still available. They might still be available, but I believe there was, again, it's supposed to be a sort of limited edition kind of approach to life. So that's the sort of general Moonbase Alpha. So this is Chris Thompson and Andrew Clements. Now I know Andrew Clements' name. I think he wrote for things like Manga Mania back in the day, and I mean way back in the day now. That's me early 2000s. So I think he's probably still doing this sort of stuff. Chris Thompson, Andrew Clements, writers. Chris Thompson, illustrator. Keith Young, Christina Logan, Catherine O'Kane, additional illustrators. Cool. Wow. That's a lot. 240 pages. Wow. Maybe I won't get through all of this in one sitting, or my phone won't. One of the two. Let's just have a quick look. Commander Koenig, there he is, Martin Landau, bless him. Forward. History and external layout. I'm gonna have to sit and read this properly at some point. So they've gone CG for the imagery, the construction of Moonbase Alpha, history and external layout, phase 4 expansion. So it covered quite a wide area, you see. It was a big base, but had about 300 people on it, I believe, at the time when they left Earth's orbit. Various nuclear generating stations to power it. It was constructed in Plato Crater. I mean, there's all sorts of question marks, obviously, would the moon actually survive being ripped out of Earth's orbit by a giant thermonuclear explosion? All sorts of stressors being placed on it. So they could defend Moonbase Alpha and cover it with a force field, but they couldn't do that for the whole moon. So how come it manages to survive as an object, when it's getting subjected to extreme stress? Well, all of these are perfectly good questions I'm sure have been asked many times over the last 50 years or so. So this is the command center. Now, the layout of the command center changed between seasons. Season 1 and Season 2 of the show are very, very different in their sort of stylistic approach to not just to the moon base, but also to life in general, I think it's fair to say. So now the travel tubes, I remember the travel tubes very clearly from when I was little. I loved the idea of the travel tubes. They could just hop in these little transport pods and zip about the place. I think here we are. So I think the old Flash Gordon series used to have something similar as well. For some reason, that just tickled me that you could just whiz about the place while sat down on a sort of sofa, and not worry about it, and you get there in 2 seconds flat. So quite a clever idea. Comms posts, you saw these being used quite a lot with little video screens. So in 1975, it was all being very cleverly done. They had little handheld units, the comlinks, that actually had video screens built into them, so you could do little FaceTimes in 1975. It was very, very clever. Bio watches, big medical centre. Looks like they've pinched the Millennium Falcon's dish. I think that's the power supply control room. Okay. I was going to say that looked like a computer centre, but that's the something else, life support. had some great actors in Space 1999 as well. So I mean, if you ever get the chance to watch a few episodes, I think they even stream on YouTube from time to time. So you can quite easily see elements of it. But you know, we've got some very, very, very famous actors. Brian Blessed appears in it. Christopher Lee appears in it. You know, lots and lots of really sort of well-known mainstream actors appeared in Space 1999. Possibly because it was getting some American funding. I think it had a really good budget for the era. And this is now I've seen people do models of this. This is the Eagle factory. So this is basically where they repair and maintain and can actually construct new Eagles if they need to. I wouldn't care to say exactly how many subtypes of Eagles there are, but I would have thought it's kind of freighter, personnel transport, science laboratory. Those are probably the three main ones, I think, from memory. Possibly some recovery variants as well to actually bring back broken Eagles. Because obviously if they can bring them back, they can repair them without having to make a completely new one, which would be a bonus. Oh, and there are these little tank vehicles in here, look. And the moon buggies. It's very clever. Yes, they've probably done their research here. And we also saw ships like this. So these are the cross pads. Now that isn't. I think now is that the Swift probe? Moonbase Alpha utilizes 5 primary launch pads. Okay, interesting. So I don't know if that's actually been labelled as a ship, but it's not. That's not an Eagle. It's slightly different. Now here's the Easter egg. Look. So this is what I was hinting at earlier. So of course those ships are this ship. So they're mentioning that you know the sort of the UFO base was a precursor to Moonbase Alpha, so that they tied the two series together in this technical manual, which I thought was rather clever of them. Following the Breakaway event, a massive restoration project was undertaken to restore the catacombs into a habitable environment once again. Further expansion has unearthed many unusual findings, including evidence of an ancient alien presence on the moon and long-forgotten top-secret military installations. There you go. So they discover the UFO base in the course of trying to expand Moonbase Alpha, apparently. Got gravity towers that they can use to form a force field, as well as artificial gravity for the Moonbase Alpha. So, you know, it was well thought through. This is one of the... I would term this, especially in its first season, a very hard science fiction show. A bit like The Expanse in that sense, actually, in that they don't ignore real-world physics. You know, it's all being very carefully thought through, because the Jerry Anderson shows always did that. They never really sort of messed with physics. You know, they did take themselves pretty seriously on that basis. So you've got nuclear waste areas being covered there, chronology there. The Eagle transporter, cool. That's a beautiful image. Loving that. Oh, the Falcon, that's interesting. Throughout the craft's 13-year lifespan, the Falcon shuttle faithfully served the Space Commission. However, as it was developed before the advent of gravity shielding, its heat shields meant it only could be used effectively as a passenger and small-scale transport craft. Okay. So that's implying then that the Eagle is using some form of sort of gravimetric propulsion, presumably? I've never actually looked into it. I don't know if they were supposed to be matter antimatter or quite how they were supposed to be driven. Oh, so these are supposed to be the prototypes. That's interesting. Wow. I'm going to be poring over this. You can tell, can't you? But I'm just going to bounce through for now. This always puzzled me. It was never really apparent exactly whether or not the windows lined up with where the astronauts sat. Kind of, and the whole sizing of the inside of the cockpit versus the outside of the cockpit was always a bit of a question mark as well. But, you know, we look over these things. Internal sections, module interiors. And don't forget, this is all practical effects. None of this was CG, because we were in the 70s. Laser-equipped Eagles, because that was a thing. Eagle propulsion, okay, there we go. ETS propulsion concept. The Eagle transporter utilizes some of the most advanced propulsion technology currently available. A detailed description of the technology can be described within a book of its own. Right. Primary propulsion employing nuclear fusion. Okay. and enabling short duration flights in cislunar space and over interplanetary distances. High thrust, short burn thrusters for vertical takeoff and landing in medium and high gravity environments. Low thrust, attitude and orbit control propulsion during takeoff and landing in non-propulsive flight, e.g. orbit transfer. So that would presumably be the RCS thrusters. Okay, interesting. So nuclear fusion, they're saying. Supplementary craft, support vehicles. Wow, there's a way more detail in here than I was expecting in terms of stuff that isn't completely Moonbase and Alpha, you know? Supplementary craft, and that's CG as well. Lunar tractor, so that's what I've got in the deluxe gift set. It's a lunar tractor. Okay. Flat top. Flat top is a one-man electrically powered utility vehicle. Say electric vehicles, brilliant. That is designed to serve a wide variety of mission profiles. Its box shape allows almost anything to be mounted on it, with common attachments including bulldozer blades, telehandlers, and magnetic grabs. Okay. Very cool. Main hard point. So it's got a sort of various things that can swap out there then. Okay. Here's the Hawk. I love how I'm just falling on the right pages. I swear I haven't marked them in any way, shape or form, but this is the Mark 9 Hawk. And as you can see here, it's coloured as that distinctive orange, which is how it appeared finally in the show. But per the one that I've got, that's not how it was delivered to the show. We've got the Ultra Probe, which I think we do hear from time to time during the course of the show. Supplementary craft, pilot craft. The Swift. This is the Swift. I'm not sure that the one that I noticed before was the Swift, although it does have auxiliary boosters there, but not there. I think they've just stripped it back a bit for that image, but that you can see the boosters there. Super Swift. Okay. More Super Swift. Voyager 1. Voyagers get around, don't they? Oh, the re-entry glider, yes. I think you can get a Product Enterprise or a 1612 edition with this attached to the top of an Eagle as well. I think they were, as I remember rightly, they were on a planet where metal was eaten away very quickly. So they had to use a glider that didn't contain any metal to get down. Talon Interceptor, that's got to be new. I've not heard of that before. Uniforms and equipment. Arctic survival suit, okay. Various patches. I've got a patch somewhere actually. I can't remember why I ended up with it, but I have got one. So this is the classic yellow helmet, orange suit, which you saw the character in the little buggy using. The comm-locks. Stun guns, love the stun guns. You can get lots of sort of cosplay replicas of those still. Heavy weapons. There's Maya. After section. So, you know, as much detail as Star Trek might have gone into, Space 1999 was right up there. You know, there was a lot of detail, a lot of hardware being done for it. And now we're going to get into sort of key personnel files. That's cool. So we had some Australians, we had some people from England, we had some people who are not of Earth, like these guys. Encounters with alien life, yes, which was a frequent thing, to say the least. Lots and lots of alien life. The Space Brain. These are actually episode titles. The Darians. Creatures from the Cloud by man. Emergency evacuation. Operation Exodus was the code word basically for moving from Moonbase Alpha off to another planet in case they ever needed to abandon the moon or chose to abandon the moon, basically. So they sort of shut down, put everybody in Eagles, take all their vital equipment with them, and then set up a colonization phase, which was, you know, the only way they were going to survive into the long term, potentially, unless they could come up with a way to shortcut it. So basically, like Star Trek Voyager, their aim is to get home at some point. But when you're just scooting around on the surface of a a planetoid, you can't really steer yourself. So the only way they can do it is if someone helps them, or if they find some means of propulsion that allows them to get there. Otherwise, their other option is just to try and find another planet to populate. So, a little bit of a whistle-stop tour through those examples of the future of the past. And yeah, I'm definitely going to have to sit and read this technical operations manual now, because I can't believe I've taken this long to even open it up properly. So there's going to be a raft of really interesting stuff in there, I think. And I think that the people who have done it will have cared enough to keep it in keeping with the series as well, I'm sure. So a lot of good hard science fiction. None of your made-up nonsense. Possibly from the aliens. But anyway. Yeah, so I'm really happy to have all these bits and bobs now. As I say, I've been meaning to get them for a while, and I just couldn't quite justify it. And I just thought at some point I've just got to do it, because otherwise I'll regret it. So I'm sure they'll probably hold their value fairly well one way or another. And I know this is by no stretch of the imagination the biggest Space 1999 collection ever, but I do have annuals and things as well, But obviously, let me know in the comments what your favourite item of Space 1999 memorabilia is, or what you have the fondest memories of, or the one that you wish you still had but you haven't been able to get hold of to this point. Just let me know in the comments. Obviously, I'm sure the people will be interested in hearing that. So thank you for sticking with it. That will have been a long one when it's all glued together. But do like and subscribe as ever if you've enjoyed that trip down memory lane. And who knows, perhaps we'll see some form of relaunch of it at some point. I'm sure people of my generation would greatly enjoy that. I think it's just, it'll just be a little bit harder in this day and age to sell people on the idea of the moon rocketing out of the solar system and then being able to go to different solar systems. So yeah, there is that. But anyway, thanks for sticking with it, and cheers for now.